Okay, we need to talk about what's really going on with all of these followers don't matter videos. We're starting to see them everywhere. Big creators telling you that the algorithm has changed and follower or subscriber counts are meaningless. But you may have noticed that nearly every single one of them has tens or hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of followers themselves. And just as I said that, if you hadn't already, you likely just took a peek at my subscriber count to validate whether you should be believing what I'm saying over what they say. And there's a reason why I chose to make this my first video on this channel, which yes, currently sits at 45 subscribers, and we'll get back to that later in the video. But before we get to that, I'd like to address why we keep seeing these videos from creators proclaiming the death of the follower, which is that these videos simply click very well because they tap into some deeper things that every creator and creative struggles with: imposter syndrome and the burning desire for shortcuts. They're promising you that you're already good enough, that you can bypass the hard work of building an audience, and I'll admit it feels good to hear that, and that mountain that we've been asked to historically climb as part of this journey can just be circumvented. But before we get into just how dangerous those claims can be and what they aren't telling you, I'll admit that despite how sensationalized the titles and thumbnails might be on those videos, there is some truth in them, and after watching dozens in preparation of this video, I can boil down their worthwhile takeaways into 3 specific points that you should be aware of as a creator looking to really take control of your business and growth in the coming year. Where the death of the follower is a valid claim is, one, for those of you who are mostly interested in pursuing a purely ad-based monetization of your creative work on different platforms. For example, with YouTube monetization through AdSense, which is calculated by views, watch time, and the value of ad placement in your niche. 2, for platform-specific sponsorships, brands are increasingly looking at engagement rates and view counts more than they care about followers or subscribers. And when it comes to 3, that comes down to viral growth, where algorithms have gotten better at surfacing engaging content regardless of creator size. Which means both that once you grow a following, you can't really rest on those laurels like you could before and assume that your audience will continue to see your content as a guarantee. But also, this is a huge opportunity for newer creatives where platforms have evolved to better understand what people genuinely want to engage with, not what people choose to signal that they care about, which, as we know, doesn't always reflect one-to-one. But here's the crucial distinction. Though these videos aren't wrong about these 3 scenarios, they're wrong about presenting it as the complete picture. They're taking very specific platform mechanics and oversimplifying them into clickbait titles, and most people won't stick around for the full nuance and context of where that is true, or have the experience to, more importantly, understand when it isn't, which can really be detrimental to your career as a creative if you just take that message at face value. So to avoid that, let's get into 3 real-world examples of why building a following and audience is absolutely crucial to making good, sustainable money as a creative. Having worked as the creative director of a billion-dollar tech org for the past decade, let me pull back the curtain a bit on how follower counts actually impact decisions that companies make when choosing which creatives to work with and how much they are willing to pay them. When a company looks to hire out work to creative professionals and freelancers, whether that's designers, writers, filmmakers, strategists, or artists, there are 2 evaluation tracks happening at the same time. The first is really what most people expect, and it's that creative evaluation where they assess their creative perspectives and style and taste and generally the creative sensibilities around the projects they worked on in the past to see if they would be a good collaborative fit. The second track is the business evaluation, which is when it comes time to pitch for internal approvals of the project, to present possible routes forward and the associated costs with each option. While it is not the only signal and consideration, there is a direct correlation between the audience size of each of those optional candidates and how much implicit trust or scrutiny these business stakeholders place on their viability in these budget and approval discussions. For candidates with smaller followings, this translates to those who did the creative evaluation needing to do a lot of extra work to offset that doubt or concern by personally advocating for choosing them, that the metrics these stakeholders can't directly evaluate will still translate to value, and that they can sufficiently mitigate the risk of the budget level that they're proposing for that creative option. Sometimes if the internal creative evaluator doing the pitch to the business stakeholder has built up a reserve of trust and goodwill and feels like cashing it in, they can push nearly anything through, but more often than not, there exists that direct correlation in many companies with the audience size of a creative and to what degree the business stakeholders are inherently willing to approve and pay them. And you might be asking why, and there are two very practical reasons that are somewhat interlinked. And the first is that when stakeholders don't have the background necessary to evaluate creative quality themselves, a significant following suggests this person knows what they're doing, and it acts as a proxy for expertise in the domain for the stakeholder. Second, and this is crucial, is that a larger following significantly reduces perceived risk, which is really what most business stakeholders are there to do. Someone with a substantial following has a lot more to lose if things go wrong during the project, and this could mean that they're less likely to get the company into licensing issues, for example, with improperly used assets, or that they're more likely to deliver high quality work to protect their industry reputation, or just simply that they have a proven track record of delivering what audiences want, which would be a good fit for the project. So let's look at another example of how a following can impact your ability to earn money as a creative. The other day, I was researching creators in the creative economy space, and I came across James Smith's YouTube channel, and I was really connecting with the way he was presenting and thinking about business and entrepreneurship as a creator. But when it came time for his call to action on a product he offered, I instinctually checked his subscriber count, and I hate to admit it, but his authority on the subject took a momentary hit until I noticed a thumbnail of one of his other videos being suggested that said something along the lines of why I quit my channel with 400,000 subscribers, and suddenly I was right back in it. Now, that might seem like a crude and amateur reaction on my part, but it really was truly instinctual, and I know logically that there can of course be experts who are just new to content creation, but that's just plain and simple human psychology in action, and that's not going to change just because algorithms are putting you in front of more people when it comes time to actually getting you paid as a creative. And I've had that same reaction in the past with other creators like Tom Nosky, for example, where I absolutely fell in love with his YouTube content at first watch, but was a bit hesitant to convert to any of his offers until I realized that he'd built up huge followings and traction on social and had just started his YouTube. And as a note here, just to pause for a second, you can build trust and authority in other ways besides just a following. How much money you've earned, for example, or what you've accomplished in other businesses, like I did a few minutes ago, where I leveraged the decade I've spent as a creative director at a billion-dollar tech org to build trust. But for most people who are young or new to this game, who don't have that external experience to draw on, when it comes time to monetizing their creativity, whether through services, digital products, or courses, your follower count is likely the metric that will act as your initial trust signal and give you the ability to charge premium rates, because the people who will buy from or hire you are either those who are familiar with you and in your audience already that you have built up trust and deposited enough value to that they are willing and feel safe purchasing from you. And the other group are those who are new to your audience and content, but are quickly able to evaluate your credibility through social proof, which for most people in the short term will likely be your follower or subscriber count. Now, while having a following is important for building trust and social proof, especially if you plan to monetize through clients, services, or products, not all followers are created equal. Let's look at Jack Conte's South by Southwest keynote titled "The Death of the Follower" as an example here. He makes some really strong points about how platform algorithms are making it harder to reach your entire audience. But again, despite the catchy thumbnail and hook, what he emphasizes in the actual talk isn't that followers don't matter, it's that having the right followers, what he calls true fans, matter more than ever. And what he's getting at here is more of a nuanced take than many of those other clickbait YouTube videos, in that he's saying a sustainable income as a creative can be had through building a smaller, highly targeted following of people who genuinely value your work, and that can often be way more valuable than a massive following of casual observers. In my experience, this is absolutely the case. If I had to choose, I would way rather have a medium-sized audience of people who fit my exact target customer than a huge audience of casuals who just randomly dropped a follow when a one-off piece of content went viral at some point. Now, if we move beyond trust and authority building with how that relates to direct monetization, The social proof of how many and who follows you can create a powerful amplifying effect when it comes to opening up other opportunities. Let me give you a real-time example of this in action using Jack Conte again, who I'd mentioned just before. If you aren't familiar with him, he's the founder of Patreon, and he only follows 400 people on Instagram currently, and for the moment, unless he sees this and really dislikes me shouting him out on this video, one of those 400 accounts that he follows is my personal sci-fi art and storytelling account called Future Familiar, which currently sits around 125,000 followers on Instagram. Now, this fully loops us back to that intro about you checking my subscriber count and why I made this my first video on this channel, because I imagine a few things just happened in your mind that I want to explore. First, knowing that I've built up not the largest, but a fairly substantial following has likely increased my sense of authority and your trust in what I'm saying at least a few degrees, which means you're likely now more open to the idea that I might know what I'm talking about when it comes to the real value of followers, especially given that I built that following not by telling people how to create a following like many of the circular creator economy channels here on YouTube, but by actually building a following outside of it around my art and storytelling. And further, had I invited you to check out any of my products at any point in this video, whether a completely free product like my newsletter where I help creatives gain more leverage over their future life and business, or a premium product, for example, with Future Fundamentals that helps creatives of all kinds master the timeless, valuable skills that make creatives irreplaceable even as AI reshapes our industries. Knowing what you do now, you would likely be at least more open and willing to give those links in the description a look. Now, this example does perfectly illustrate how following size instills trust and interest in monetization avenues beyond just ads based on views, but if we get to that other point of who specifically follows me, we can move beyond direct monetization, because when other creators see not just the size of the following, but more importantly, who among their respected peers follows and engages with your work, like Jack Conte in this case, they're far more likely to respond to collaboration requests or invites to guests on a podcast, or even proactively reach out in the first place themselves. And that's because this social proof acts as a filter. It shows that others who deeply value their time and attention have chosen to invest in your work. And I can tell you that through building my audience, I've had the opportunity to network with and to talk to some of the industry heroes that I've looked up to for years, and it's an absolute direct result of having built that following. So the real takeaway that you should come out of this with when it comes to building a following around your creative business is that it's not about choosing between going viral or building a following. It's about understanding how each layer serves a different purpose in building a sustainable creative career. The volume of your following establishes that foundational layer of social proof that opens doors across the board, whether that's getting you hired by companies or landing clients or selling products. You can think of this as a baseline credibility, and it's perfectly okay that as part of that volume, not every follower is your ideal customer, because that social proof padding does serve its purpose as long as you're still building a strong core subset of followers who genuinely reflect your ideal customer, because it's that subset of the right people who actually care about what you do, and maybe more importantly, how you can help them do it too, that translates into real business results. And these are the people who actually buy your products and recommend your services and help you build those valuable partnerships that we talked about. And while all of this will contribute to your conversions, in the end, traffic matters just as much, and the tactics of creating content that drives traffic is maybe more important than ever to pay attention to, which is something that we'll get to in future videos for those of you who subscribe, because the reality is you can't rely on your followers to guarantee views like you could in the past. Now, if you're starting out, that actually works in your favor. It means getting your content in front of people is entirely in your hands. Every video, every post is an opportunity to reach massive numbers of people. But remember that unless you want your business to rely on constantly going viral and the temporary spikes of ad revenue that approach might bring, which nearly every creator will tell you is the least dependable source of income, then the objective of reaching those viewers in the first place is really in service of building up that audience and following who will later convert. Because while algorithms might change how many people your content gets in front of, they haven't changed how humans make decisions based on trust or authority, or how business really works. So yeah, I hope you found this helpful, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments if this resonated with you and if there are any other topics or tactics that you'd like me to cover in future videos. So yeah, until then, thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.